Tell him, McCluskey. Tell him what time it is.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
All you people are so scared of me.
Come quietly or there will be trouble.
Man, that's just me.
I'm Batman.
This is Sparta!
There is a tiger in the bathroom!
I'm an excellent driver.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Pop quiz, hotshot.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Hate that clown.
Easy. If you can't beat the clown, how you gonna beat Shooter McGavin? Yeah! You're gonna die, clown!
Hello and welcome to the Monday Movie Show on a Monday, the 17th of August 2015. I'm Andrew.
And I'm a very ill Stuart.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I want sympathy though. I've had no sympathy over the last week. That's the worst thing about living on your own. The best thing is, obviously, you've got your own space, but living on your own, you get no sympathy when you come back home from while you're ill at work. So I need sympathy. I need hope.
Diddums. Oh, sending hugs your way. Nah.
Not off you though.
Yeah, I don't want whatever you got. Keep it to yourself. We're here for the next 90 minutes or so. As you say, normally we can join us in the chat in the bottom right hand corner on Spreaker if you're listening to us live. Just click little chat icon in the bottom right hand corner and you'll be able to chat along with us. If you're listening to us anywhere else, then also the places you can find us are things like mondaymovieshow.co.uk, facebook.com/Monday Movie Show, on Twitter at Monday Movie Show, as well as finding Stuart there directly himself at Cryptic Tadpole and me there at AHDVD. And also we'll go through as well at the end of the show with that again and some other places which you'll hear about through the show, no doubt, as we go on. But what we're here for, as usual, is the movies. We're here doing a bit of news, bit of charts and looks at these new releases. What do we got, Stuart?
Guy Ritchie brings the cult 70s British TV programme to the big screen with The Man From U.N.C.L.E. Adam Sandler in video game adventure Pixels. Simon Pegg in British comedy Absolutely Everything. We've got Judd Apatow directs comedy drama Trainwreck, and then Precinct 7-5.
Yep, and then of course in the home release section we'll have a look at the latest DVD and Blu-ray top 10 as well as the new DVD and Blu-ray releases. Not a lot this week, but some interesting films, I think.
Yeah, it's a very small week. It's a week for mainly TV DVDs, but on offer we have high school comedy in The Duff, horror remake in The Town That Dreaded Sundown, and supposed comedy sequel with Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Yep, as I said, if you're listening to us live, feel free to join us in the live chat in the bottom right hand corner and let us know if you've had any comments or if you've seen any of these movies we just mentioned or any of the movies that we're about to go through in the box office top 10 in the moment. But before all that, as usual, let's go on to some movie news.
You might as well kick off as you normally do.
Well, I was thinking maybe you did this week. Well, I'll go. Okay. My first piece of news, big piece of news regarding the new Star Wars films that are coming up. We already know about episodes 7 and 8, but the director has been confirmed now for episode 9. It's been first reported by website Heroic Hollywood in July, but it's been confirmed for definite now that director of Safety Not Guaranteed and Jurassic World, if you haven't heard of the first one, director Colin Trevorrow, I don't know, it's a weird name for me, though has been confirmed as being the director. In a statement, he confirmed this and also stated, "This is not a job or an assignment. It is a seat at a campfire surrounded by an extraordinary group of storytellers, filmmakers, artists and craftspeople. We've been charged with telling new stories for a younger generation because they deserve what we all had, a mythology to call their own. We will do this by channeling something George Lucas installed in all of us, boundless creativity, pure invention and hope."
Oh, what a lot of bull squat there. That is a kind of quotes that didn't actually come from him, but you've got spin doctors surrounding him going, "This is exactly what you're going to see, and make sure you see it word for word." That is just a lot of boo hockey, that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's been brought in now, obviously, after the big success of Jurassic World, showing that he can do a film with both storytelling and with action and with effects. And, you know, it's the whole thing of that Josh Trank was lined up to do a Star Wars film, and then you heard of the problems it had, and then you saw how Fantastic Four turned out. And then, of course, he's no longer doing that. So, Colin Trevorrow, on the other hand, I mean, he's proven success, he can do it. So, what do you think? You looking forward to a Star Wars film directed by him?
He's proven... Well, he's only proven success with one film, and I think it wasn't down to what Trevorrow did with the film. I think it was just down to the amount of hype that surrounded it and the fact that people were excited to see another Jurassic Park film. So I think it was down to that, not down to Trevorrow, because very few people that have seen Safety Not Guaranteed beforehand. I know you have, I haven't seen it. And so people wouldn't have not known who Trevorrow was, and then all of a sudden he's directing a Star Wars movie off the back of one success. I know the success is monumental. Nobody could have predicted how Jurassic World would have done, but being able to helm a franchise as big as the Star Wars series, it's just interesting that they've given him the chance to do that. I wonder if he's going straight from doing Jurassic World to doing this to start prepping for episode 9, or if he's given the chance to do something else in between, because hasn't he said that he's not going to direct Jurassic World 2 or whatever they're going to say it.
He said, I think he said he's going to be involved maybe at the script stage and at the stages for like producing it, but not going to have anything to do with directing it, because I think he decided after doing the first one he just done it, he didn't want to do another one. Yes, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I think sometimes it's good to have a bit of diversity in a franchise. I mean, look at Mission Impossible, for example, which has, as much as the last one wasn't the best one, the last one was still good and decent, and you've had a different director for each one. John Woo's is not a particularly good one, but John Woo's film is a good John Woo film. You know, it's that typical kind of, you know, the whole action ballet, if you like, of John Woo. But each of the Mission Impossible films were their own thing, but were good in the franchise. So I think it helps to stop a franchise from becoming stale by having someone different doing things each one.
Yeah, but it's still just off the back of Jurassic World. And again, how much of it was down to Trevorrow? Could it not have just all been down to Chris Pratt and how big Chris Pratt has become? And so his name probably was the biggest standout with Jurassic World. It's just interesting to go with somebody like Trevorrow to do it after, especially because you've got J.J. Abrams, which is doing episode 7, which is out this year, and then you've got Rian Johnson, who's doing episode 8, which is probably due out at the end of 2017, and then Trevorrow, which will do episode 9 at the end of 2019. So he's got a gap of 4 years, which I know he won't go into production and things like that with episode 9 until at least 2017. So what's he going to do for those 2 years? Well, 1.5 years. Be interesting to see if he does something big, or if he just does a couple of smaller films, like maybe he's go back to Safety Not Guaranteed territory, and then do something big to lead him into doing episode 9 to see how he handles it, because he might have just been a one-trick pony with Jurassic World, and not a lot of people loved Jurassic World. There was a lot of people who were on the fence with it, so we'll just see what he can do, because after 2 films, it's a big thing to tackle, a Star Wars film.
The thing I'm surprised at is obviously Star Wars is now under the guise of Disney, as is Marvel. Now, what I'm surprised about is that you have Josh Trank was approached for it, who did things and then was under Fox for Fantastic Four. Colin Trevorrow did Jurassic World, which was Universal. So I'm surprised that Disney hasn't tried to keep things in-house, that they've gone for directors from other studios that did things, and were things obviously that they wouldn't have been able to get information on. I mean, they hired Josh Trank, then there was people saying, you know, they spoke to people who were there when that was done. You'd think they would maybe go to productions of films that were in-house, that they could then see the records, find out and everything, and go, well, this person's a good director, or this person's a bad director, and then decide whether or not they want to hire them from a track record they can see. Not go, oh, there's someone who did a great film from another studio who we have no idea how they work, let's bring them in.
You know that this is completely left field, but I would have liked to see Disney take a chance and go with a female director. Just have a look at the female directors out there and give a chance. And somebody, it's an insane idea, but you can just imagine Catherine Bigelow directing a Star Wars movie.
I was just going to say that. I mean, having just recently rewatched Zero Dark 30 being on last week, and I do love her as a director. I don't know that I would like her as a Star Wars director. I've not seen her do anything science fiction yet. Kind of with Strange Days, but not really. So I'd like to see her do something else science fiction to show more, because there are directors who are great directors, but they're not great sci-fi directors. They don't have a head for sci-fi, and nothing against her, but I've not really seen anything from her that was sci-fi to show that she has the mentality for it.
Do you think that they would have looked at Neil Blomkamp if he wasn't involved as much as he is now with Alien? Because they're prepping Prometheus 2 to start shooting next year for a 2017 release, and as soon as that's released, he's been told that he can then start shooting Alien 5 for a 2018 release. Do you think that they might have looked at Blomkamp, considering what he did with these three South African science fiction films?
I think they definitely considered him, and either approached him and he wasn't interested because he maybe just wants to do his own things, or something that he's inspired by. Maybe he's not a Star Wars fan. I mean, he obviously wants to do the Alien films because he's got an interest in Alien. He wanted to do it. He kind of pushed for it and is getting it happening. If he was into something like Star Wars, he would have pushed for it and then possibly got approached. But if he's not, I suspect he's a director. If he's not interested in something, then he realises maybe he won't make a good film.
Yeah, the final thing, the thing that I'm actually liking what Disney is doing with episodes 7, 8, 9 is that they've got a different director for each one. Yeah. So each film will probably have a different feel to it, rather having George Lucas or a single director just involved with every single one. I know J.J. Abrams is probably going to produce episode 8 and probably have a production credit with episode 9 as well, and probably Rian Johnson might have a production credit with episode 9. So there's some attachment there, given sort of like help from that. But I like the fact that they've gone with different directors to hopefully give each one of the films a different feel to each other.
Well, that's what there was with the original trilogy, was all different directors. George Lucas only directed the first one, and then unfortunately went to do all three of the new trilogy, which weren't as good. So I'll move on anyway, because we're taking a bit of time on this. In other news, Jermaine Clement, the co-director of vampire mockumentary What We Do in the Shadows, was interviewed in the Seattle Times. In the lengthy interview, which he confirmed some other details, including regarding the series Flight of the Conchords. He also confirmed there is a plan for a sequel or spin-off of What We Do in the Shadows, which will follow the werewolves featured in the movie.
That's just gone over my head because I've not seen the film.
It's one I really want to see what you think of it, because we know what you're like with comedies. You don't really find them that they work for you. Let's say it that way, shall we?
Yeah, which is unfortunate considering that I've got 3 comedies to review this week.
Yeah, but I think that What We Do in the Shadows is one that you would actually get, and I think you'd have a lot of fun with. So I kind of want to see what you think of it, because I think you'll enjoy it. And seeing it as a spin-off of that, I would gladly see that. It wasn't a big film, but it was an okay hour and a half. You know, it was one of these kind of little cult movies that I think will by now have a fairly big following.
Well, I know that Lauren, who does the horror show from Page 2 Scream with me and the other Stuart, I know that she watched it and she's into sort of like these cult horror films. She didn't like it at all.
But it's not really a horror film. It's a comedy about horror. So
she gets that kind of stuff, and she just didn't like it. She's into very cheesy horror films, like the B, C kind of great horror movies, which I sort of like have a soft spot for. That's why I was helping out Cicada the movie. But she's got a soft spot for that kind of thing, and she didn't like What We Did in the Shadows. She's sort of like eager for me to watch it as well.
Okay, on to another piece of news. Patrick Stewart, who played the character of Professor Charles Xavier in the X-Men movies, has confirmed that he will have a fairly major role in the third and final standalone Wolverine movie. He'll appear along with Hugh Jackman in his final appearance, and has confirmed that the role is going to be more than the kind of cameo that we've seen him in the previous 2 movies. Although he did not confirm anything further, there was sort of references made that have made people suspect that it may be taking elements from the comic book Old Man Logan.
Oh well.
It's Old Man Logan apparently being a very dark... I don't know it, but apparently being a very dark and twisted storyline, which sees a particularly aged Logan, which will, because of the fact that we will be seeing Hugh Jackman in some quite heavy prosthetic makeup. So, I mean, it's going to be the third and final one he'll be playing it, so maybe why not, do the ultimate story, if it's supposedly a very good story but a very dark one, written by Mark Millar, apparently, who wrote the Kingsman and Kick-Ass comics. So, I mean, why not?
Yeah, because they can't make it any worse than the last Wolverine film or the previous Wolverine film, X-Men Origins.
Yeah, the first one was pretty bad. The second one, though, I quite enjoyed, apart from the villain. The villain was terrible. It did suffer from Marvel, what's becoming kind of the Marvel villain syndrome. Although, obviously not Marvel, 20th Century Fox, so...
Yeah, it's the Fox problem, where Fox haven't a clue how to handle superheroes.
My final piece of news is regarding another Fox title, Predator, or rather the Predator reboot, which is apparently still in development at 20th Century Fox. Shane Black, who's said to be directing the movie, has also written a script that has been called Genius by producer John Davis. He wrote the original script for the first Predator film, as well as having a small cameo role in the film as one of the characters, and also then went on to have success in writing things like the Last Boy Scout, the Lethal Weapon movie, and most recently wrote and directed Marvel's Iron Man 3. There's still no idea as to whether or not it's going to happen for definite, and when it will start a film or anything, or even when they want to have it released. So wait for that. Hopefully there'll be some news on that soon.
Yeah, like I said to you before we started the show, I think that's a really good piece of directing choice to choose Shane Black, because even though I didn't much like Iron Man 3, I saw elements of that which would work in different kind of films, and I think he'll bring something different to it, because Robert Rodriguez's version of Predators, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't as awful as people made it out to be. There were parts of the film which actually worked. And so it's nice to see that somebody like Shane Black is involved with a reboot in the series again, to be honest.
I'd actually say he's kind of he's almost not exactly like him, but he's almost, in terms of his ingenuity when it comes to film, and also in particular ingenuity when it comes to dialogue in film, because you have some scenes such as the whole scene with the villains standing there sort of talking with Robert Downey Jr.'s character before he ends up fighting them, and some bits in there which just oddly work, and you just know they're Shane Black if you've seen any of his other things, and he's kind of like got that in that way, kind of like Joss Whedon, in that he can write something that is obviously, he's got a style very obvious to him, but kind of takes things and twists them on their head quite intelligently.
Yeah, and so I really like the idea that Shane Black is going to direct it, and you never know, the next Predator film might be released the same year as the new Alien film. So an Alien and a Predator film in the same year. That
said, the original Predator, a classic, doesn't need a reboot. I would be happy to see another sequel as long as they did it well. I'd rather see a sequel more than a reboot. It's a franchise which I think is still alive. Not so much as it's almost been killed off by Alien versus Predator, but the Predator franchise, I think they could possibly do more with it, still keeping it going, not restarting it, which is unfortunately just the way things go now.
Yeah, I actually think that it was rescued by Rodriguez, as a matter of fact, because Alien vs Predator 2 was a horrible film.
Oh, yeah.
It was given to the people who did the special effects on the first one, and then did
the Brothers Strauss, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, they did that science fiction film as well. I forgot the name of it. Skyline. Yeah, no, awful film. They did that.
Great effects, well, fairly good effects, but
because that's what they are. They're effects artists. They're not directors.
No.
All of my news is like small little pieces of news. So that was the reason why I went with it, because I knew that you would go with the big stuff. But Disney have announced a new Lion King film titled The Lion God: Return of the Roar. The film will be a prequel to the original and will air on the Disney Channel this November.
Why? Really? Honestly, why?
I don't know. James Earl Jones is doing his return as Mufasa.
It's like Disney has decided to give up on traditional animation being released in the cinema. So they're doing traditional animation and releasing it straight to TV.
Yeah, what I find funny is they're doing that, and then they're going in the opposite direction with cinema and doing live-action versions of their traditional animation.
Yeah, I mean, we got the Jungle Book, which apparently at the new Expo thing they've just had recently, Jon Favreau showed some footage from it, and it got a standing applause from people, standing ovation. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what he's done with that, because Jon Favreau, let's admit it, he's a competent and good director, but he's never done anything that has really excelled.
Yeah, it was at D23, wasn't it? Isn't that like the sequel to the Mighty Ducks? More news. It's been announced that the Friday the 13th franchise will be revived again, however this time as a TV series. The CW will be reviving it.
So copying the formula recently done by this Scream TV series by MTV, so we'll see, which apparently works. I haven't seen it.
No, it doesn't.
So I can't say. Well,
trust me, it doesn't. I have seen it, and no.
I've heard people saying that it works, so I mean, it's possible that Friday the 13th could work as a series. I don't think so, though.
It's very MTV, and unfortunately, this has gone to the CW, another station that you don't want them to do stuff like that, because if you look like Ash versus the Evil Dead, that's got the feel and the heart of the Evil Dead series, whereas this is going to something like CW. No, thank you.
It's made for teens, because CW tries to do stuff for teens, though not entirely. So, but there may be hope.
No, there isn't. Universal have announced that their replacement for Arnold Schwarzenegger with the Kindergarten Cop reboot, Dolph Lundgren, will be stepping into the teacher's shoes instead.
What?
Yes.
Actually, no. This is one occasion when I would say do a reboot of that and get The Rock to be in it.
No.
Yeah.
Just don't do a sequel or reboot.
Well, if they're gonna do it, but I'd say get The Rock, because The Rock is basically he is the modern day Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Help. Yeah, two more pieces of news. The last one is not technically news, but I just wrote it down because it's very interesting. Warner Brothers have announced that Scooby-Doo will return to the big screen in 2018 in animated form.
I have no comment on this. I'd rather forget it, but I doubt I will, unfortunately.
Yeah, if I had Joss Whedon would actually love to forget it, but if I had my voice, I would have done my Scooby-Doo impression, but that's not going to happen.
Actually, no, Joss Whedon. I'd love to see a Joss Whedon Scooby-Doo.
No thanks. And final piece of news, like I said, it's not technically news, but I thought this was a WTF kind of thing.
So I was going to say, if Joss Whedon did Scooby-Doo, which one of the characters do you think he would kill off in the film?
I was going to go Scooby, but that's just like too obvious.
Yeah.
An architect has announced a huge ambitious project. He wants to create a life version of Minas Tirith from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. On his Indiegogo page, he is asking for £1.85 billion for the project. If the campaign is successful, then work will begin next year in the south of England.
Yeah, I did see this. I did actually repost it on Facebook. It's not going to happen, but it'd be great if it did. How awesome would it be to have, like, I'm going on holiday where? To Minas Tirith.
Whereabouts? Oh, it's near Cornwall. What?
Yeah.
It's just out of anywhere they choose England. I didn't even know we were big enough to recreate Minas Tirith.
Oh dear.
I found that really funny. That's it for my news.
Okay. Let's get moving on then. UK box office top 10. Get through these quickly. In particular, some of them we haven't seen. Number 10, Amy. So we can't really comment on that, but it's doing okay for itself for a documentary. Number 9, Jurassic World.
Which we've said absolutely everything we can about Jurassic World. It's a good film. No, nothing better than that.
Yeah, managing to take just over £63 million at the UK box office, and that is no small feat. 8 is Secret Cinema, The Empire Strikes Back, so we'll go straight on to Minions at 7.
Actually, one other quick thing about Jurassic World. It's the 8th highest grossing film of all time at the UK box office. So there's something new. Minions you've not yet seen, which you need to see by the end of the year, because it is a really funny film. Not as good as Despicable Me 2.
6 is Ant-Man.
I thought it was okay. You liked it much better than me, but it's normally the tendency when it comes to superhero movies. I think the only time where it was the other way around was Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think I liked that more than you did. But Ant-Man, it's got some interesting ideas to it. It just still suffers from the Marvel problem.
Although I think it was a bit interesting to see a different kind of Marvel film, a little bit lower tech, a little bit kind of almost indie and heist film instead of the normal big action, save the world thing.
I love the fact that a film was called Almost Indie, even though it still would cost $160 million to make.
But it had an indie feel to it, which is what's
at $160 million, the most expensive indie movie ever made. Then
new entry at number 5 for The Gift.
Yeah, which I wanted this to do much better than it has, because even though that you watch the trailer and it doesn't do it justice, the trailer makes it look a really bland film, a very stereotypical thriller. When in fact it's more of a drama, I felt like, with thriller elements to it. It's got some nice twists and turns. It's got some really good acting, especially by Jason Bateman. It's very well competently directed. I just thought Joel Edgerton handled things really well for his directorial debut. He's wrote a few films in the past, but this is his first time he's directed a movie, and it gives him prominence for what he actually is going to create in the future, and well done to him. I just wanted the film to do much better than it has done.
I actually really wanted to see this, and I tried to see it, but I didn't have time with everything else going on. And the thing that really annoys me is the fact that it's a new film. I think it's a small film, but the problem is my local cinema now is an 18-screen cinema. 18 screens, and this only has a few showings on the day starting at about 4 o'clock. It doesn't have any earlier screens. There are other films, it's a 15-rated film. There are other 15-rated films, though, that are on all day. And this seems to have been given a bit of a shove to the side and put on kind of like they've gone, we've got all these films, and then, wait, we've got this as well, so we'll put it there. It feels a bit like it's been mistreated and just kind of thrown to the side a bit, which, from everything I'm hearing about it, is good. So I don't see why.
It's already made its budget back. It did that within the first weekend because it had a budget of less than $5 million. And most Blumhouse production films have that. So it's done well for itself. The next movie from Blumhouse is The Visit, which is out in a couple of weeks' time. That's directed by M. Night Shyamalan. And that looks actually pretty interesting. So, yeah, I wanted a lot more people to see it.
New entry, but number 4 is Southpaw, which I know you haven't seen, but I really liked it. It's not the best boxing thing ever. It is very kind of typical of the whole boxing movie genre, but it's got at the centre of it a great performance from Jake Gyllenhaal, who is brilliant in the film. So it's worth seeing for his performance, even if you're not into boxing films, because it's a very good performance. I actually saw the trailer for Creed, the Rocky spin-off, and that looks very kind of similar thing as well, possibly a bit better because of the fact that it's focusing more on the character and the things around it and how they affect it. This struggles a bit with that, but it's still worth seeing. Number 3 is one I still haven't seen yet as well, Inside Out.
Yeah, there's a small mini spin-off movie coming out in November from Inside Out. It's just telling the story of the lead character of Inside Out and her first date. And so they can go in a lot of different directions with what they've laid out with Inside Out. So obviously a sequel is probably planned because it's done really well for itself. It's come up to something like $600 million at the worldwide box office, which is fantastic. And it's Pixar's best work since Up, because the stuff that they've released after Up wasn't up to scratch at all. They had times where they were just releasing the same old. Unfortunately, they've announced a new Cars film. Cars 3 was announced at D23, the Disney Expo that they had, which is annoying because I wanted that franchise just to be sort of like relegated to DVD because it wasn't a series that handled really well on the big screen. And so I want Pixar to do more films like Inside Out, sort of like step away from the comfort zone a little bit, but add elements into it that they have been so used to doing. and create something a little bit more original, which is what Inside Out is. A lot of the word original is really hard to come by in any form of film, and especially animation, because animation seems to tread the same old steps we've seen before. And when a company creates something different, it stands out a little bit more. And I think this year has been superb for animation when it comes to originality. So you look at The Tale of Princess Kaguya, you look at Song of the Sea, and it's two animated films which tries difference with their style and their originality in that way. And so this one was more concentrating on the inside of a character rather than the outsides of the character and their emotions on the outside. So I think it's really well handled on that front. It definitely needs to be seen.
I will try and do that. Number 2, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation,
which I thought was a very average movie. I think the Mission Impossible series is sort of like had its time now. It needs a bit of a break to sort of like relax a little bit to see where it's going in the future, because the blueprints that was laid by Rogue Nation is not blueprints I want them to follow again. We thought that it had its dynamic really well with the previous Mission Impossible film, because it was more like Andrews keep on saying, it was more about the team rather than the single person in Ethan Hunt. Whereas this one, it's gone back to the Ethan Hunt stuff, but it hasn't gone back to the Ethan Hunt stuff of the first Mission Impossible film, which worked really well because there wasn't a full-on team dynamic properly built around him. Whereas those foundations were laid, yet Christopher McQuarrie decided to ignore that and go down his own route with it, and it just didn't work for the film. There are some elements which do work, especially the opening set piece, but after such a strong opening set piece, it's going to be really difficult to follow, and the rest of the film comes nowhere near it.
Which means that despite all of the negative press and reviews, and despite it even struggling to make it to the top spot in the US box office top 10, Fantastic Four is the new UK number 1.
Yeah, it's dropped like a stone in the US. You look at a superhero film, and to see a superhero film in its second week only having $41 million at the US box office rings alarm bells, considering that it was shown on the most screens in the US as well, and absolutely slaughtered by movies like the new Straight Outta Compton, for example, went in at number 1 with $56 million. Fantastic Four didn't even manage that in its first week. Never mind its second week. It dropped off 68%, which is the highest drop-off over in the US. It only struggled to make it into the number 1 spot in the UK box office, because if you take out the preview takings, it would have only been number 3. Which it shows you what's wrong with the film. There is a lot wrong with the movie. There are ideas in the film which you can see Josh Trank's handle on it. The darker elements of the movie works really well. The rest of the film is so sloppily handled. You can tell there was a lot of fisticuffs and turmoils in the background between the director and the studio, because it just felt like there was no chemistry at all with the group, with the 4 involved. And you need that there. You need the chemistry, because it's 4 characters, and you need each one of the characters to be unique within themselves, but bring something to make the team feel whole. When in fact, they felt like 4 separate characters who were off in different continents across the globe, pretty much Skyping each other and going, by the way, we've got a bad guy together, let's meet up for one weekend and beat the bad guy, and then we'll go back off again to our lives. And so that's what it felt like. It's a disjointed movie.
Okay, so that's the UK box office top 10. Let's go going into the reviews, because we've got not a lot to go through, but a few fairly big films to go through in this half of the show. Going to start off with The Man From U.N.C.L.E, which is directed by Guy Ritchie. Also had writing it with Lionel Wigram, who's wrote some of the Harry Potter movies and the Sherlock Holmes movies, which Ritchie directed. You have in there in the cast Henry Cavill, who plays Solo, and Armie Hammer, who plays Ilya. The two of them being Solo being an American agent and Ilya being a Russian agent. The whole thing being set during the 1960s, after the whole thing of the sort of end of World War II. There's this whole thing going on then of the Cold War, which if some people may not be aware of that, the Cold War is kind of a period that went on where even after there was no longer a war, US and Russia still kind of had a war of spying on each other and subterfuge and distrust going between them. The two of them play opposing agents who, after a sort of moment where Solo helps a character named Gabby, played by Alicia Vikander, to effectively escape from East Berlin. I'm not sure if it's East Berlin or West Berlin. She escaped from one with his help while Ilya's chasing after them. Then the two of them find themselves being pitted together and actually made to team up because of the fact that there is this threat from a group of sort of ex sort of Nazis who are potentially getting together the equipment and people that are certain skilled, a particular scientist who happens to be the father of Gabby, and putting things together to potentially make a nuclear bomb. So the two of them are teamed together unhappily, end up sort of working together, and at certain points sort of going into certain things on missions where, including, for example, this scene we're going to play, where they're trying to break into a place that's got a big massive vault door. Here's a clip.
This is a Swiss-built Wortbender Landsman 7010 model. Still, very difficult to open, but it's not impossible. People who designed this model are not very good at stealing things. I, however, am.
Did you deactivate alarm?
Model 7010 doesn't have an alarm.
Loving your work, cowboy.
So you hear in that clip there's a little bit of sort of ironic comedy going on there, and the whole thing is that the film has the look of the 60s down. It is very much in a kind of a reference to the whole Bond era then, and the whole style of the Bond kind of films there. If you're not aware of it, The Man From U.N.C.L.E. is a TV series originally from the 60s. This is kind of redoing that, because you had Robert Vaughn, who played Solo in the original, and Ilya was played by David McCallum. And it's a series I remember seeing bits and pieces of it, but it's one I have to admit I never saw the original series, so I can't compare it in this case. And I gotta say, in this, it's the thing that's weird about it is that Guy Ritchie has an odd way of doing films that are set in the time period they're in, back when they are, but he does the oddest contemporary style of filming that he has in there. If you look back at the last two Sherlock Holmes films, both of them they're obviously set when they're set at different times in older periods. They really look the part. They're really well done. But he decides then to do a lot of contemporary camera work, to do a lot of contemporary styling to it, and to shoot it very, very much contemporary than to shoot it as you would maybe see the old Bond films. And that, in the Sherlock Holmes films, I think the first one definitely works. Second one, not quite so much. It kind of throws it off a little bit. Here, it's there and it's works for partly, and then there's other times when it doesn't work, and you kind of go, yeah, I felt it took me out of it. It distracted me more. I would have loved to have seen it been shot a bit more simpler. I don't think it's a bad film. I do think that's a problem with it though, because the feeling is off for it. I think that it does work the way it does look, definitely the way that the actors are. I think that Henry Cavill is enjoyable in it, but not quite as suave as Robert Vaughn I think would have been. From what I do remember of him, and you've seen Robert Vaughn in things over the years, you know he's a man who can pull off charm. Henry Cavill has this little bit, it's kind of a little bit that he's a bit sort of snobbish in it, which kind of goes on, because his character is supposedly a man who wasn't originally a spy. He was a villain. He was involved in stealing artwork after the war, and investing money himself and being very lavish with his own money and things, and then he was caught, and because of his skills would offered a thing of become a spy for us or go to jail for years. You have Armie Hammer is perfectly perfunctory in the film, but he's not as strong as I think he could be. Alicia Vikander is fine in the film, but I don't think she's especially well written for. And you have the villain as well, who's played by Elizabeth Debicki, who is perfectly fine, and at moments seems to be very dark, and then other times it's a very sort of flip-flop performance. So it's not a great film by any measure, but it's enjoyable. It does manage to do what it says on the tin, which I think it has a good drama, it has a good comedy, and it has this thing where there are moments where it's funny, but the humour sometimes doesn't work. And the biggest problem I have is that the first half of the film feels like it's like if you have a lighter and you're pressing it and it's click 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 click, and it's there, you're waiting for it. That's what the first half of the film is, and then the last half of the film, it finally ignites and you start getting somewhere. So it's a very slow burner for the first half, but then it does pay off in the film. So it's a film that it's not quite even, it's not brilliant, it's not a bad film, but it's kind of unfortunately let down by the first half that it turns out to be a bit more average than good.
I haven't seen it because I sort of slightly sceptical. It reminded me a lot of watching the trailers for his Sherlock Holmes reboots, which the films themselves, they're okay. They're nothing special. If you go back and watch them now, you can see the problems with it, and it relies heavily on the Robert Downey Jr. stuff. And from what I can gather with this film, it seems to be concentrating more on the dynamic of the characters. Do they work well together?
They do. I mean, Henry Cavill is no Robert Downey Jr. and Armie Hammer definitely isn't either. But the two of them do have this kind of interesting chemistry between them. They do work well together. It's a good pairing. I mean, apparently, I was reading about it that Tom Cruise was originally cast as Solo at one point, and then left it because he wanted to do more Mission Impossible films. And even then, George Clooney was cast at one point as Solo. I don't think George Clooney and Armie Hammer would have worked because of the fact that George Clooney would have outweighed Armie Hammer, whereas the two of them, Armie Hammer and Henry Cavill, are kind of similar footing in their acting skills. I think. I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're brilliant actors. I think they're good, passable. They suit the role as long as the role works for them, and they do both work in it. Alicia Vikander, I think, doesn't. I think actually she's the weak link in it, and I don't think it's down to her because we've seen her in films and she certainly can bring it when it comes to acting. I think she's just poorly written here, maybe not directed the best way she could have been by Guy Ritchie, and I think that's a problem, definitely. But the two of them, the scenes where you have the scenes there, that clip with the two of them breaking into a place and they're there, it basically comes about that the two of them are saying, "Oh, I'm not going to go do this," and it turns up they're both there, and they go, "Right, fair enough, we can do this then." And it's an interesting dynamic between the two of them that it just does work.
It's just, I think by the sounds of it, because Armie Hammer and Henry Cavill has sort of like not had a good footing when it comes to films, because the Lone Ranger is a terrible movie. Yeah. And what Henry Cavill has done in the past as well has not been pretty good. I didn't much like the previous Superman movie at all. And so it seems to be that they get better footing because the fact that people sort of like know that they aren't that good of an actor. But they're surprised of what they can pull off. And like you said, Alicia Vikander, by the sounds of it, she got the short end of the straw.
Yeah, I mean, Henry Cavill, I think, but I can't remember the name of the film. The one we saw him in, it was kind of his big debut thing. It was a European small film with Bruce Willis as a sort of cameo. The name
it wasn't Cold Light of Day, was it?
It was Cold Light of Day, which is terrible, and his performance is not good in it. You got to admit, it's a terrible performance in him. But then when he did Man of Steel, I was sold on him. I was impressed with him, and I thought, fair enough, he's proved he can act. And he does the same in this. He's suave, but he's a bit up himself, which is the thing that's kind of... For the character to be that good, he needs to come across as suave and actually win you over. Not suave as in you want to go, well, screw you. You know, you're that suave, do it yourself sort of thing. You're not going to get any help from me.
Yeah. Right, on to the next film, then, which is Pixels, directed by Chris Columbus. This is the Chris Columbus that people know, especially if you grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, who did things like Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire, and then went on to do the first 2 Harry Potter movies, and then Percy Jackson. And so now he's returned to the direction duty with Pixels under Adam Sandler's production company, Happy Madison, and stars Adam Sandler, who plays Brenner, the later on Brenner, and Kevin James, who plays his friend Cooper, again the later on, and he's also known as the president in this movie. But the start of the film is set in 1982, where you see the characters of Brenner and Cooper, and they're both best friends. They both love playing video games. Brenner seems to be better at video games because he enters a tournament and he does brilliantly up until the last round, when he has to go up against he's sort of like his arch enemy throughout the film, later on played by Peter Dinklage, who plays Eddie. And so he ends up winning this championship, and all the stuff that gets involved with this championship gets put into a time capsule, and sent up into space and completely forgot about. So the movie fast forwards to present day, where Brennan now, he works as a home theatre installer. Eddie sort of like lost track. We don't know what happened to him. Then we discover he's in prison. And Cooper, he's now become president of the United States. So this is a world where Kevin James is president. Shudder to think of that. It's a really horrible thought. And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, aliens start to attack Earth. And it's discovered that the reason why the aliens are attacking Earth is because they've discovered this time capsule that's been sent up in there. They discovered the video game characters from the 80s, which include everything from Pac-Man to Cubit, etc., and decided to take the forms of them and attack Earth in this. And so it's up to Brenner and his friends to try and stop them, but they need the help of Eddie. Here's a clip.
In exchange for helping us, I will personally speak to the parole board about reducing your sentence.
Pass.
Pass?
That deal don't work for Eddie Plant. You want the Fire Blaster's help, he has some demands.
Demands?
The bifocal blaster is here, by the way.
I want an island.
You're not getting an island.
Then I want a full pardon. I want to get out of here for good. And after I do, I don't want to pay no taxes, like forever. And I want a stealth attack helicopter, like they fly over the Super Bowl, at my disposal at all times, so I can fly around. If the world's still here, I don't want to deal with traffic no more. And lastly, I want you to set up a romantic rendezvous between me, Serena Williams, and Martha Stewart in the Lincoln bedroom.
And so in the film, they enlist the help of one of their previous friends, who's played by Josh Gad, who plays Ludlow as well, and they have to stop this alien invasion, which involves everything from Centipede attacking London and Hyde Park, and then you've got the Duck Hunt dog as well, and you've also got Pac-Man, and they bring even the creator of Pac-Man, Toru Iwatani, to try and help them out, which you've seen in the trailer as well, where he goes up to Pac-Man to try and say that he's a good boy, and then he gets his hand bitten off, and so he ultimately sees attack him. And so the film itself is littered throughout with 80s video game references, and on that front, the movie's a bit of a success, because trying to bring those characters to life is a bit of a hard thing to do, especially getting the rights to all those characters as well. It must have been a nightmare. I don't know if they've sort of like shoehorned them in there as to say, yeah, we're going to just include them for a small amount of time so we don't have to pay any kind of money to the companies, because there's loads of companies involved. Everything from Atari to Capcom to Konami to Nintendo, because they need Nintendo's rights for Donkey Kong. And so it must have been a difficult thing to do, and to bring those to life is a hard thing to do as well. And the special effects, especially the voxels, which is known as, not pixels, so I don't think the film would have made any sense if it was called voxels, is done really well. It's a pity that everything else of the film isn't. Because by giving the lead role to Adam Sandler, it's just, you instantly put a nail in the coffin there. Because Adam Sandler can't carry a movie like this, especially a video game film. His character is very stoic throughout the movie. He's very... It's just badly handled. There is nothing to his character at all. It doesn't bring anything to the film. It takes more away from the film than anything else, because every single time he's on screen, you just want to tell him to get off screen so we can forward the storyline much more. Whereas if you look at Peter Dinklage's character, he's there for the humour, but he sort of works in a way because he realises his character is a bit of a moron, a bit of an idiot, a bit of a person who's up himself. But that sort of like helps with the character because it's trying to be like... There's a documentary called King of Kong, which is centred around two people who had a rivalry in the early 80s regarding Jumpman, or as it's known as now, Mario and Donkey Kong. And so that rivalry is supposed to be intertwined into this film here, but it just doesn't work. It only works on one side of it. So if you take Peter Dinklage out of it, everybody else is just superfluous. They're just there to be the human sides up against these pixel characters, and everything else of the film fails apart from the pixels. It's a nothing movie with some decent special effects. Set pieces are not very well handled at all. The Pac-Man section is okay, but using cars as Pac-Man ghosts is a bit silly. And so the film itself is just dragged down by absolutely everything. The only time when I sort of had a snigger on my face, and I can't believe I'm saying this, involved Kevin James and involved him shooting a Smurf. That's the only time when I sort of like had a tiny little smirk on my face, because the Smurfs are annoying. And when you can get rid of a Smurf, I'm always for that. The rest of the film is just completely avoidable.
I agree with you. I think it's not... I'll start off by saying it's not Adam Sandler's worst film. Far from it, especially given his recent things.
Oh, it's nowhere near as bad as The Cobbler, because The Cobbler made me stupidly angry. This didn't make me angry at all.
I haven't seen The Cobbler, and I haven't, and you know, it's nowhere near as bad as possibly the worst film he's ever done, and the worst film that's ever been made for a while, with a big thing like this with Jack and Jill. But the thing is that it's kind of him and Chris Columbus. Chris Columbus is capable of doing, and really shouldn't be involved in something this bad. He's capable of doing so much more. He's previously done it, you know, the Harry Potter films. He started off. He's done Home Alone and things like that. He's got so much more credibility up until now for this. And Adam Sandler, as much as it's a bit of a slight rise in Adam Sandler, it's a big drop down for Chris Columbus. The thing as well is it's a film that, not only with the story of the whole retro gaming thing and everything like that and all that, it's 20 years out of date. It's 20 years old already. It should have been released, you know, in the late 90s, and it would have been perfectly much more reference. And also, not only that, the questionable sexual politics humour in this film actually really made me mad, because there was some reference in it and scenes in it and jokes that are made that are sexual in humour and sexual and anti-feminine in certain respects, that I actually found really tasteless, and I thought they were really outdated. And I said that's why I say 20 years old, because it's the humour from 20 years ago that back then was a bit kind of shocking and all, but it was more acceptable. Whereas, and I'm not saying a film should be PC, but there are things that you can do nowadays in a film that are PC, which I find there are things you can do in a film now that you go, whoa, wait a minute, you could do that a while ago, but now it's a bit much. It's a bit too on the nose. And I found myself at times just going, you know, you could do that, but do it in a more better way. Do it more reference, and don't just go lazily to, you know, it's almost like it's decided to go straight to humour, but at the, you know, you've got like if you imagine a shelving system with jokes at the bottom, which are, you know, the lowest common denominator, with toilet and fart gags and bodily humour gags, which this doesn't have, admittedly. It doesn't have, but it's the next one up to that, which is, you know, the whole thing of, you know, terrible lawyer jokes and terrible sexist jokes and references to sexual jokes and that kind of thing. It's the next rung up. It's the next one. It's not anywhere near the top level humour you get in films. It's absolutely, actually annoying humour that I found really quite offensive at certain points. So I think it's a film that is 20 years too late, is filled with average performances at best. It has got great effects in it, but the humour actually kind of disgusted me at parts.
Yeah, the only reason why I've never mentioned any of the female actors in the film is because they're just there just to be made fun of. It's sort of like when a geek and the stereotypical visage that was given to geek that was given to geeks in the 90s. They were meant to be these nerdy people who were locked inside of their mother's basement or in their bedroom, never to see daylight, and as soon as they did, they would explode. And sort of like, it's sort of treating women like that in a way. They are just forgettable kind of things who geeks just lust after, and that's all they're used for. If you before we go on to the next film, I just want to read this on the bottom of somebody's review on IMDb. Now, they give it a full 10 stars, because IMDb stars rating list is 10 out of 10. And their last couple of lines, they said, Pixels is a great 2015 American science fiction comedy film all people must see. Ignore the brainwashed haters who were reviewing this movie without even seeing it. See it on my own responsibility, satisfaction guaranteed. Now, my guess is that person must have been Adam Sandler, because he's the only person who was going to say stuff like that about it, because Pixels is not a great 2015 American science fiction comedy. It's those words, great, are just doing the word great injustice in that sentence there. It's complete. Just ignore it. Please ignore it, because it's pushing the video game world back 20 years. And like Andrew said, it might have worked 20 years prior. It definitely doesn't work now, because it just gives us video gamers a bad name. It gives females a bad name. It gives any actor who can handle comedy a bad name. And Chris Columbus, it's now given you a bad name.
And it has a very odd... I don't want to say what it is because it's a spoiler in case anyone does want to go and see it, but I actually found the ending kind of really threw me in a kind of WTF moment. It really did.
Yeah, you know what? I actually found the ending of this more deplorable than the ending of Kingsman, the Secret Service. More despicable than the ending of this. Is much more worse, badly handled, chauvinistic compared to the ending of Kingsman. And Kingsman is a 15, and Kingsman had a very questionable ending, whereas this one is stupidly questionable and chauvinistic.
Okay, I'm gonna go get going. Moving on to Absolutely Anything, which is written and directed by Terry Jones of Monty Python fame. It is a British film which has centres around the character of Neil, played by Simon Pegg, who he's a sort of typical guy. He's a teacher at a school. He does his job and does it fine, not bothered. He has a crush on one of his neighbours in a neighbouring flat, Catherine, played by Kate Beckinsale. And he sort of lives in this flat. Everything's sort of going normal for him, nothing big. He's not really sort of able to capitalise on his interest in her, even though she does potentially seem interested. And then one day, a satellite that's been launched from Earth, similar in the same kind of thing to Pixels, is come across by an alien race. A group of sort of aliens all discuss this thing and find, it's another one of these probes. You see a whole load of different probes that have sent out with a thing that shows the human race, and they decide what we'll do is we'll put the human race on trial. We'll find this one person and we'll give them absolute power. We'll give them the ability to do absolutely anything, and test them for a few days, see how he goes, and if he's good, then we'll let the human race live. If he's bad, we'll annihilate them. So of course Simon Pegg's character ends up getting this thing, basically a blast of energy to his hand. He then finds out that he can do absolutely anything as long as he waves his hand when he says it, and there'll be a flash, and all of a sudden whatever he said, whatever he does, comes to pass. Here's a clip.
Oh, this one's in German. Wow. Let me be able to understand German. Meine Weltanschauung war in Schadenfreude getränkt, als ich mit meinem Doppel... What are you talking about, Dennis? Shut up, okay, I can handle this. Dennis, she is madly in love with me. Okay, what is wrong with that? Dennis, what are you talking about? Actually, that is a really good point. What are you talking about? Dennis, be able to speak.
Biscuits.
What?
Biscuits.
Maybe if I make her love me like a little bit, not so much that she wants to marry me.
For crying out loud, they're in the cupboard.
What are?
Biscuits.
Well, I'm not going to give you a biscuit until you answer my question.
Biscuits. Red biscuits. Black biscuits.
Is that all you think about?
Biscuits. Please, please, please. Nothing else matters. Biscuits, please.
All right. Dennis, become a rational thinking creature.
Look, I just can't concentrate on anything till I've had one of those biscuits. I know it's crazy, but that's how it is. I guess I'm kind of hooked on them. So please, give me just one biscuit, then I'll be able to think about something else.
That makes sense.
Oh, he's getting the biscuits, he's getting the biscuits. This is it.
and that is the voice of Robin Williams in possibly his last performance as the voice of Dennis the talking dog. And it's a film that it has this great setup, this great potential, this great idea, a simple stupid idea in the way, same kind of stupid way you have things like it reminded me especially of, in the British humour way, of things like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it has moments where it does make you laugh, and it passes the 6 laugh test, but never has any massive big laugh out loud that you're thinking, you know, oh, that's brilliant, you know, it's great. I mean, I actually, as much as I kind of enjoyed this, I really enjoyed the last film I saw Simon Pegg in. No, sorry, the last one before, obviously Mission Impossible, but the one with Lake Bell, where there were sort of a couple that ended up meeting and weren't supposed to. It was a blind dates thing, and it had a lot more humour that set up things and paid off a lot better than this. This has a lot of very ropey jokes. Not that they're bad taste or anything like we were saying about with early films with Pixels. There's nothing in this that is particularly bad taste. There's some bits in it which are genuinely funny, and you kind of go, you know what, that was cleverly done. But they're not quite as well pulled off as you would hope. It's a film that kind of very plays it safe, too much so for a lot of times, and is a bit too conventional than it should be. I mean, it should be taking some chances here and there, but it does have some things like, there's a great moment where he's trying to chase someone and catch up to someone who he's getting on a bus, so he just waves his hand and says, me on the bus, and then he actually immediately just appears on the roof of the bus. You know, it's clever in a way that it's like, no, I didn't mean on the bus, I mean I want to be in the bus, and you know, it has to say specifically. So it's got little bits of humour there. There's this weird thing with Kate Beckinsale's character and an ex-boyfriend of hers who turns up, which isn't quite weird. There's also a little weird sort of cameo with Eddie Izzard as a headmaster of his school, and there's a bit odd thing as well with a friend of his who basically gets a woman that can't stand him. He gets her to worship his friend's feet, basically, and, you know, worship the ground he walks on, and it ends up with her basically worshipping him as a god, so much so that they want to kill him so he can prove his godliness by coming back from the grave. And it's got some nice ideas. It just doesn't pay them off, and it's a shame because of the fact, to say, it's Simon Pegg who's good in this kind of comedy normally. Kate Beckinsale is just kind of doing a similar kind of thing she did in a lot of roles where she just plays the love interest. There's not anything especially brilliant for her. There's nothing bad. She's not as badly written for as Alicia Vikander is in Man From U.N.C.L.E, but there's still nothing really special to take advantage of it being Kate Beckinsale. And it's a perfectly okay film. It's just it's such a disappointment because of the potential of it, and it doesn't get anywhere near to the potential of it. Especially, I mean, it's a film that it feels kind of like it's maybe been stripped down just to try and stop it from being boring, because it's only 85 minutes long. So it flies by, but you kind of feel like, you know what, it's missing something. And I think it's missing probably 20 minutes of stuff which either was boring and should have been done, you know, they should have done 20 minutes of stuff, put it back in, and made it better. So it is a very average film. It's not a bad film, but honestly, I came out and I was kind of like, you know what, I'm still hungry for more comedy like that. It's disappointing.
Does it heavily rely on it? By the sounds of it, it's one-tone joke, because its one-tone joke is once Simon Pegg gets the powers that he's been imbued with, that he has to be very specific with what he says, and so the humour comes from him just saying, like you said there, I want to be on the bus, and then all of a sudden be on the bus, on the top of the bus rather than inside the bus. Does it heavily rely too much on that?
It kind of does a little bit. I mean, even there's opportunities where it could have really done something brilliant with it, and you could have got a really good laugh at it. I mean, another one is an example where he says, because it starts off with him saying something when he first gets the power and doesn't know it, that he says that he wishes that, you know, aliens would destroy classroom D10 or something like that, and the next thing you know, the school is hit by an alien blast and room D10 is destroyed and a whole load of students are killed. And he then he's like realizes that he's got the power and that's what happened, and he goes, oh my god, let everyone who died be fine and be alive, and the next thing you know, all of a sudden it's like a zombie apocalypse. And they could have done things like, you know, made a Shaun of the Dead reference and really played it up and got they could have got a massive laugh out of that. As it was, they had a little snigger, and then it corrects it and it's back to normal. And it's kind of like, you could have done so much more with the potential of just the idea of a man who can do anything with his hand, just wave it, say it, and that happens. And it just doesn't take advantage of it.
Does it feel more like an expanded Monty Python sketch than a film?
It does, very much so. It feels like something that could have been a 5-minute sketch. It would have been fine, and you could have done it, and it would have been great. The whole thing of the aliens as well, because it cuts back and forth to them, interjects them every now and again. It feels a little bit, as much as it's obviously going from being on Earth and normal and everything to these aliens and everything, it feels that a lot of the humour there falls really flat. The alien dialogue, as much as they're just talking about things and them talking about, oh, this happens, you kind of sit there, and I was honestly thinking the alien bits is like, this doesn't need to be take the alien stuff out and just have it be something else, you know. It was a bit, it felt a bit forced and didn't quite work with it.
What about the voice of Robin Williams? Because I know he plays the voice of the dog of Simon Pegg.
He is perfectly fine and gets laughs, but it's very much a subdued Robin Williams performance. If you've seen anything with Robin Williams doing stand up, with him coming up with lines as he's doing them, you know, ad-libbing stuff, he was capable of being so much funnier and just coming out with stuff that would have been better than this. It's almost as if they got him to do the script, they got him to read the lines that they wanted, and then that was it. They didn't bother saying to him, Robin Williams, they didn't bother saying to him, go, right, we've got your lines, go nuts, do what you want, and see what he came up with, because I guarantee he would have come up with something that would have elevated this.
Much more quotable, sort of like the genie out of Aladdin, rather than what's come up now.
I mean, it's legendary that Aladdin was one of the first films where they normally write the characters, they write it all, they do the dialogue, they animate the characters so their mouths match what the dialogue is going to be, and then they would get the actors to record it, and that is responsible. Him being put on for Aladdin, I believe, is responsible for them changing things around, so they actually record the voices first a lot earlier, because then they have ingenuity of people coming up with stuff and spontaneously saying stuff that's funnier and better than what was originally scripted, and then they can animate it to fit it perfectly. So it's, you know, he's the kind of guy that changed that area of filmmaking.
Right, on to the next film then, which is Trainwreck. It's directed by Judd Apatow, a person who we absolutely love here. Now, after 4 years we've been doing the show, we can tell you we've had joy watching a Judd Apatow film. This time it's written...
I was just thinking back to This Is 40, sorry.
Why would you think back to even that one? Because
it was the last Judd Apatow film I think I saw.
Yeah, and it felt like you were 40 by the end of watching the film. This one's written and starring Amy Schumer, who's sort of like one of those people who's come from Saturday Night Live, made it big in America, and she's big in stand-up, more sort of like a controversial comic. She's a female comic, and she sort of like speaks her mind more so, rather than somebody who's reeled back. And in this film, she plays the character of Amy, brilliantly named there, who seems to be a very self-destructive kind of person. She doesn't seem to be very interested in relationships at all. Sorry, again with a cough. She's more interested in just these one-night stands. And so for the first 20 minutes of the film, you see how her life plays out, which is just these one-night stands, the rules that she lives up to. She hates staying back at the person's house. She'd rather just has the sexual encounter and then leaves. And you see the sort of like reaction on the people's faces when she does that. She works for a very high-end magazine whose boss is actually played by the completely unrecognisable Tilda Swinton, the actress who's just a chameleon. Anything that she plays, she plays it completely different to the previous film that she was in. And so she plays like the boss of this magazine, who's very sort of like uptight but speaks her mind. And she's her boss gives Amy the chance to sort of like redeem herself a little bit by giving her a task to do a story that's completely out of her comfort zone, which involves sports. Amy knows absolutely nothing about sports, and she's tasked to sort of like shadow a sports doctor who's played by Bill Hader, who plays Aaron. And all of a sudden, one night they have a date and things go really well, and the next morning she gets a phone call from Aaron wanting another date. Here's a clip.
Oh my god, he's calling. Why would he call? You guys just had sex. It's probably a mistake. It's a mistake. He's butt dialing you. Hello?
Oh, hey there, it's Aaron.
Oh, this is Amy. I think you butt dialed me.
No, I dialed you with my fingers.
What's she saying?
He called me on purpose. Hang up. He's obviously like sick or something. So he's yeah. What's up?
I was calling to say I had a really good time last night. I was wondering if you wanted to hang out again.
Will you say that again, please?
I was wondering if I could see you again.
You know what? I'm gonna call the police. Hold on. Yeah, I'll just talk to you about it tomorrow at the interview. Okay?
Oh, yes. She said
Okay.
She said yes.
Bye.
All right. I'll talk to you then.
Oh, man.
Huh?
The more, though, that she goes through the film, her character goes through the film, the more she starts to fall for Aaron, which seems really strange to her, seems really alienated to her. And so the film takes a different tact to what the first hour lays out, because the first hour is more sort of like the gross-out kind of comedies that we would expect from Judd Apatow, with the fart jokes and all the boob jokes and all the sexual references. And then the second part is very, again, typical of what Apatow does with these movies. It gives it a different tone. He tries to interject it with some realism, some drama. There's a drama element which changes a few parts of the story, specifically involving Amy and her father. Her father's been put into this old people's home, and something happens to her father and sort of like fractures her relationship with everybody, but ultimately will bring it back together again. And Apatow does that. If you look all the way back to Bridesmaids, he did that with Bridesmaids. He gave it a two-tone feel. Gross out in the first half, drama in the second half. And it just never works for me. It just never melds together because he doesn't know where the best point for it to meld together and to bring it back together again. What I did like about the film, though, is Amy Schumer. She handles the gross-out humour really well. She handles it much more better than any of the actresses that Apatow has brought into it. And this is sort of like the part that I appreciate Apatow, because he knows how to write characters for females rather than just making them very stereotypical or making them sort of like the attraction piece of the film. He gives them more depth and more human elements to them rather than being eye candy. And I think with the help of the writing partner with Amy Schumer and a lot of the films that Apatow has worked on, he's had female writers work alongside him. It helps with the film in that instance. Even though I didn't much like Bridesmaids, I still appreciated that the film was completely female-centric rather than just being about these ditzy bridesmaids going to try and find the attractiveness out of men or whatever. And so the film itself, with its centering around on the Amy character, needed somebody strong to be able to play her. And I think Amy Schumer handles that really well. Bill Hader, the last film he did was Inside Out, and so this is a completely different turn for him, and he handles his character really well. So the characters are very well fleshed out in the film. When the drama elements happen, they work, rather than just being sort of like written into there, just to add something more with weight to it, rather than the comedy that we've seen throughout the film. It feels like it has its place, and Apatow is sort of like led up to them properly rather than just throwing them in there. So there's elements of the film which work really well. It's just his heavy reliance on the gross-out humour, which I'm sick of seeing. I want Apatow to just go away from that kind of thing, reel back more so, make his films with the humour but much more coherent and cohesive, and also cut a good half an hour from his films, because I don't see why his movies should be 2 hours long. It's just very self-indulgent, not as much as This Is 40, because I think that was just his major indulgent piece. This is not that kind of film. It's much better from Apatow. It's one of his best films, actually.
I have a question about it that I'm curious about from what I've seen about it, and that, especially in that clip. It sounds like it's a film that could be very good at kind of having a reference and a commentary on the whole thing of how dating's changed given technology and stuff, and the way people don't kind of meet as they used to in a sort of, well, say the olden days, but you know, as people did 20 years ago, dating and all that kind of thing has really changed, and in some ways got a lot harder and a lot more difficult, and some people kind of just don't do dating at all because of that. It sounds as if it's something that has a great potential. I'm guessing because it's Judd Apatow, it doesn't take advantage of that and doesn't make any kind of reference to that at all. It's other than it being used as kind of like the stage for the characters.
No, not necessarily, because by it's never actually brought up in the film, but Amy seems to be sort of like scared of technology. Even though she works in a magazine where it's all centered around technology, she seems to be scared of that kind of thing. She seems to be scared of life because she's on a very destructive path. The path that she's on, she thinks, it's really good for her character because she is this woman who is sort of like brought up by her father with a mantra of that monogamy isn't realistic. And so that's the way her life has been brought up with. So she thinks that attaching herself to one person is the wrong thing to do. So she just has multiple night stands. There's a funny scene in the film where she has a one-night stand with a character played by Ezra Miller and discovers that he's actually 16. And now he's a temp who's working at the magazine where she's working at. And it's just an interesting play because he's a really creepy character. And that's sort of like helpful with her character, and bringing in the Bill Hader stuff with the sports stuff, it helps with the character as well.
Okay. Right, so before we finish for this part of the show and have an ad, I'm going to quickly go through Precinct 75, which is a documentary directed by Tyler Russell. It's based around the whole thing of that during the 80s and New York Police Department, one of the precincts had a sort of at the centre of it was a big thing that happened to do with corruption, and in particular centering around this cop, Michael Dowd, who was basically a cop who started out as normal as everyone else, and then one day makes that slip down that very, very slippery slope, which starts off really a whole career of crime and doing the exact opposite of what he was there originally to do. Here's a clip.
Eventually, one day I was hurting for money, and I just took a risk, and I pulled over a motorist who happened to be an 18-year-old mystery. Back then it was called a Puerto Rican mystery. No license, no registration, no plates, no nothing. But he had a nice thick stack of $100 bills on him. And I said to him, I like, you got about, $1,500 to $2,000 worth of tickets here. So I suggested that if he bought me a nice lobster lunch, I could let him go. And with that, he promptly took a couple $100 out of his wallet, left it on the back seat, and pulled out of the car, and I drove away like I was going to get arrested, and I didn't, and I won.
It's a good documentary in the sense of that, I mean, we always do it, we always bring it up, anytime we talk about a documentary now, it gets compared to Senna. It's just going to be one of those things ever. And the thing is that you have documentaries where there is a voiceover, or sometimes you have a commentary done by sort of text that comes up on the screen, and then majority of it will be through the interviews. And this is one of those ones where it doesn't have a voiceover. It is mostly through the clips, through the interviews, through original footage from the time. And there's footage of Michael Dowd in a deposition that he went through when he was arrested, and he basically gave details of his activities and such, and explained it all in court. You have interviews with people and his partner who he was with at the time and such, and all other people that worked around him and the people that were investigating him and things. And it's very well laid out, very well played, and very well explained to you, even as in layman's, that you would have no problem understanding where it started, what happened and such, and then where it led to eventual conclusion of what happened. And it occasionally does have moments where it stops, and then you have commentary on the screen in text that tells you what happened. But it doesn't kind of do that too much to interrupt that. It just does that to fill in the blanks and then let the footage go back to telling you what's going on and showing you what's happening. Has a little bit of a flashy edge to it because some of the editing is showing pictures of documents and stuff and explaining things, and you have diagrams that show you the whole things, like where the precinct was, in that particular area where it covered and such. And it shows how that in the 80s it was basically kind of as if it's trying to justify the character, justify justify Dowd's behaviour, but obviously setting up the whole thing of it being one of the most violent districts there were. There was shootings every day, and that kind of thing. And the thing is, it's impressive because of the fact of that it does have this whole thing of the morality of it. It does it without directly questioning the morality of it. It plays all the footage to it, plays all the interviews, plays interviews from both sides of the coin. You have villains there, you have people who were investigating things in the police that eventually arrested the person. And it's an interesting sort of morality issue because it kind of very cleverly plays things to you, and actually not in a bad way, but manipulates you slightly by getting you actually interested in the characters, interested in the people and what happened, and then it kind of twists things around, and you see what happened, and you go, well, hang on a minute. You find out this person who you're introduced to, you know, he did take a slippery slope down this path. He was a good guy, but then by the end of it, when you find out sort of things that he did, the things he's done, and the things that he kind of went into as things went worse and worse, and you then realise how much of a despicable person it is that you're finding out about, and it turns the tables on you very cleverly. So I have to admit, I was impressed. I was kind of disgusted but impressed at how it did this, how it told the story. But it is, once you've seen it, clearly how much it's manipulating you by saying, you know, well, this person was this, they only started wanting this, and then they did this. And you kind of go, oh, you know, you pulled the wool over my eyes a bit. So, and I think that that's both a good point and a bad point, because I like that it managed to do that. It managed to trick me a little, but I didn't like that I came out of it going, hang on a minute, you tricked me, you made me, you kind of sucker punched me, and that was it. So, but the fact that it managed to do that, to draw that out of me, overall, is what impressed me with it. And it's well edited, it's well put together, it has a structure where it knows what it's trying to do, and it pulls it off. And it's not one of these documentaries that meanders around for ages and you start getting bored and wondering, well, why are you telling me all this? I don't need to know this. It actually does tell a story, and it tells it quite succinctly, quite well, considering the running time is over an hour and a half. It doesn't drag out, it doesn't go, oh, we need to tell you all this because you don't need to. It just goes straight into it, and it's gripping and very well done. I really, really was impressed with it.
Good, because it seems to be, well, from what we've seen anyway this year, a year where documentaries haven't decided to shine a little bit. Because documentaries, I think, is a hard thing to sell on the big screen. A lot of people will be reluctant to go and see. I think the standout one at the moment is still Amy. It's still finding its way in the top 10 within like 6 weeks of being released, and so that's sort of, you get that every now and again. It would just be nice to see documentaries sort of like released at slightly more wider audience, because my cinema, it is just predominantly showing the big films of the week, and that's it. It never takes a brave step of trying something different, and so these kind of films I never get to see until it is released on DVD and Blu-ray, and it's the kind of films that it's nice to watch something different, because the documentary world is something different rather than watching something that's overly scripted. Yeah. It's nice to watch something like that.
I would love to see this go into the top 10 next week. I doubt we will, because of the fact of that it's not a British thing. It's about New York. It's maybe if you're in New York, I get it would be a thing. Maybe obviously it's 30 years old, so it's a documentary about things that happened 30 years ago. But the thing that it would be, obviously, if it was something about, you know, London, something that happened, if it was about corruption in London 30 years ago, something that people would know and even remember, or, you know, because if it was here, people would go, oh, you know, I want to know about that, I'm interested in that, it'd be nice to find that out and to know about it. But because it's New York, it's not going to have the grip and the reach, obviously, that Amy does. Amy's not only about a famous singer, but it's about a famous singer from the UK, so it has that pull, and obviously someone who was, well, quite much loved by a lot of people for her music, and that obviously has the big pull. It's going to do really well. That's why it's still sticking around in the top 10. This, I don't think, is going to have that pull, but I think that anyone who's interested in police and policing, and especially to do with corrupt cops and the whole thing of that happening, I think is going to be interested in this, and I hope they're going to see it, because I don't think it's got a big release. But I mean, the thing is, we were saying about earlier about The Gift, this is actually on essentially the same. This is being given in my local screen the same showing sort of thing as The Gift is. It's at that kind of level, so I don't think it's going to be around for that long in the cinema. I think if people want to see it, they should go now, see it, and sit there, and I think they'll come out fairly well entertained, and I hope, having sort of been engrossed in it for the hour and 40 minutes that it runs.
Okay then.
Okay, that's it for this week's cinema releases. We're going to take a quick break, after which we'll be back with this week's DVD and Blu-ray section in the home releases section. Be right back.
there was a real sense of you were doing something wrong, but that did give it that feeling of excitement.
When the reveal of the film happens, that's when it just becomes absurd.
And the atmosphere and just the sense you get whenever you go into it is undeniable.
It did absolutely zero for me, which could be for the hype.
What we've just discussed there is just scratching the surface on it.
Hi, I'm Eric England, the director of Contracted, and you're listening to From Page to Screen, the horror show.
So, DVD and Blu-ray top 10 section, we'll be going through that in just a moment, but then after that we'll do reviews. We've only got a few, but fairly decent movies, I think, this week. What do we got?
High school comedy with the Duff, horror remake with The Town That Dreaded Sundown, and again, supposed comedy with Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Which will then round out the show as usual with a look at some TV movies of the week. We'll give you our decision out of these films, what we think was the best one, or the best ones. And then we'll end you out with a clip to what's something that's coming up. But then, as usual, let's go through the DVD and Blu-ray top 10 first.
Number 10 is Kingsman: The Secret Service.
Yeah, I mean, it's hanging around. It's still hanging in there. I really enjoyed it. We both kind of liked it. You didn't like it as much as I did, but considering that you're not a Bond fan, for you to like this, I think is a big thing.
Yeah, and number 9 is the second best exotic, Marigold Hotel.
Perfectly fine sequel, more of the same, nothing wrong with it, but I think if you didn't like the first one, you won't like the second one. If you did like the first one, this is an easy follow-up. It's a light watch, nothing special, but decent.
And number 8 is the first of the Liam Neeson films in this week's chart, Taken 3.
Which is far from decent and not worthy of any more of our time.
And number 7 is a new entry for Robot Overlords.
Which is a perfectly fine British film in that regards of that you see British stuff and what kind of levels of effects you can do. I mean, the first half of the show we had absolutely anything. Similar kind of thing I did, but it doesn't really take advantage of what it can do. It does enough, but not really enough that it should be. It should be doing more.
It surprised me by going in the top 10 actually, and I think this is its home more so than cinema-wise. DVD, your home release is better.
I agree, yeah. I think it's more of a home film than it is cinema film.
And number 6 is the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water.
Absolutely bat-crap crazy, but stupid fun, not just for kids, for adults as well, but it's just odd. It's such an odd film.
And like I said, switch it off after the 70s. As soon as the live-action stuff happens, just switch it off then, because that's when the movie becomes boring and bogs itself down too much.
Be prepared for strangeness and just stupid things, but it's funny.
I think you get that when you've got a talking sponge who lives in the bottom of the sea with square pants on. It's just the name.
Yeah.
And number 5 is Home.
For me, the least successful of the DreamWorks animations, though. If you look at the box office success of that, you wouldn't think it. Didn't think it was that funny. I thought a lot of it fell short, and the animation isn't even fantastic either. So, very below par for DreamWorks. I'm disappointed with it.
And number 4 is a new entry for The Water Diviner,
which is a good effort on the part of Russell Crowe directing, and as usual decent performance in it. It struggles with the narrative once it gets a certain far along and introduces other characters, in particular Olga Kurylenko's character, which doesn't need to be there at all, and it's fine. It's a good Australian made film, even gets a decent performance out of Jay Courtney, but it's not fantastic. It's not as great as it could have been. It's not as epic as it wants to be, though it does try.
What I find funny is that Joel Edgerton knocked it out of the park with The Gift, yet Russell Crowe slightly struggled with The Water Diviner. And Joel Edgerton, it was his directorial debut, whereas this isn't Russell Crowe's. And so he's been... No, it's not. He's been around for a lot longer as well in the movie industry. Yet Joel Edgerton managed to successfully create something which had tension in it, whereas Russell Crowe had a bit of a problem with this.
Having not seen The Gift, though, I do think there's obviously comparatively a difference in scale of the two films, and what The Water Diviner has a much bigger scale than The Gift, from the looks of things.
Yeah, still, I think he bit off slightly too much than he could chew with the film. At number 3 is a new entry for Get Hard,
which is a questionably comedy film, because of the fact that it has some downright racial tones in there. It has some moments that it does have humour in it. It's just not very good humour, and some people will find it. They'll get a lot of laughs out of it. Some people will find that they don't, and either get bored with it or get irritated with it.
I hated it, yet I've got a friend who works with me who laughed his head off. He said he had to actually step out of the sitting room and go outside for a couple of minutes because he found it really funny. Yet I found the movie was so negative to every kind of group of people out there that there was not one little thing to like about it.
Very racially stereotypical, yeah.
It's horrible with that kind of stuff. Number 2 is a new entry for Run All Night.
Which is... It's Liam Neeson just getting by on action films roles, which aren't really action films. They're not really thrillers. They're just Liam Neeson... honestly talking like he's chewing tobacco and speaking into a phone for half an hour and then going, oh look, I better shoot this person or I'm going to get shot. I mean, that could be literally applied to his last 5 films, and this is no exception. In that regards, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's still better than Taken 3 though.
Yeah, that's true.
And at number 1 is Insurgent,
which I liked it. It is the problem of having a sequel, which is the first one was really, really good. Divergent was a great, not read the books, but Divergent was a great film that worked out a lot better, great pacing. And then the second one, they came along and thought, oh, we need to do action, loads of action, and put in loads of action bits and do all this and big effects and all that. And it doesn't need that. It could have been a better film if they had just relaxed and taken their time with it instead of going, oh, effects, action, storytelling, no, what's that, don't worry about that. Not saying that it doesn't have a story, not saying that it is completely brain dead, but it definitely is a step down from Divergent.
Major step down, actually.
Yeah. So we've got a few films to go through. First one goes to you, so I will yield to you.
It's The Duff. It's directed by Adam Sandler, and it is a high school comedy with tiny little elements of drama. It mainly centres around the character of Bianca, or B, who's played by Mia Whitman in the movie, and she's sort of like the outcast of school. She's the geek. She's very good with her schoolwork. She's very knowledgeable, yet she's not attractive to anybody at all. Yet she has these 2 really attractive friends who get noticed every single time they walk into school. Prime example is in the opening scene of the film, is her, B, with her 2 friends. They walk into school and these lads are drooling over the 2 friends, but as soon as they see B, they're repulsed by her. One day she learns that she is now the designated Duff, or as it's known as, the designated ugly fat friend. Now the person who tells her this is the guy who lives next door, and who's been sort of friends with Bianca for most of her life. He's Wesley, who's played by Robbie Amell. And during an encounter in the sci-fi lesson, that would be nice in school, that wouldn't it? During a science, during a science lesson, they have a bit of a tete-a-tete, which doesn't go very well. Here's a clip.
Hey, Duffy, shouldn't you be working with a partner?
Shouldn't you be working at all?
My partner's got this.
Oh boy, clearly. Bill Nye over there looks like she's about to drink that acid. I work alone. Take a hint.
Why are you so grumpy? I should be mad at you. You ruined my favorite shirt.
You called me fat and ugly, Wesley.
What? No, I didn't. I called you the Duff.
Yeah, excuse me. It's just that stands for designated ugly fat friend.
The Duff doesn't actually have to be fat or ugly. Like Tony Romo, he's a Dallas Cowboy. It's not like he rides a horse, right?
I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
I'm just saying, I would never call anyone fat or ugly. Okay, that's messed up, but it's the word and it's stuck. It's a catch-all.
Oh my God. Get out of here before I murder you.
Are you kidding?
I'll murder you.
Okay.
And so what B decides to do is she makes a pact with Wesley, because Wesley is failing science. And so if he does that, he will not be able to play on the football team. So in the very stereotypical manner, if she teaches him how to learn up on science and learn things like that, he will help her with her life, to be honest, change things around, stop being the Duff and be somebody who's noticed. And it is that sort of like, we've seen this a million times before in these high school comedy movies, sort of like the ugly duckling being turned into the beautiful swan and then she getting absolutely everything. And it's stupidly stereotypical on that front. It tries to be more with the kids in a way by throwing in lots of social network references and using Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of thing to make the story more funny, and having a few little jokes which skate on the edge of being slightly vulgar but more down to earth to what the teenagers are like. And it sounds weird coming from a 34-year-old person that these are just stupidly stereotypical, but they were there and present when I was a teenager, when we were watching films like Clueless. But films like Clueless handled it really well because it didn't rely heavily on the very close to the edge gross out humour to try and bring along the comedy element of the story, yet interject it with very stereotypical elements of that happened to children during high school. So the film just doesn't work at all. Even though the character, she's played pretty well by Mae Whitman Bianca, even though she's okay through the film, it just follows so many checklist things that you're just waiting for the film to end, because you've seen it done multiple times before, and better. You can predict absolutely everything that happens during the film, and that's not good. It needs to have a little bit of surprise. It needs to have a little bit of inventiveness. It needs to have its own twist, its own turn on the genre. But it never, ever, ever attempts to do anything like that. And to make things worse, Ken Jeong's in the film.
Oh God.
There you go. There's the ultimate nail in the coffin. As soon as you mention the actor Ken Jeong, you know, yeah, it's just he doesn't crop up that much in the film. He plays a teacher, but he's still really annoying. The film itself is not very good.
Okay, I know your throat is not very well, so I'm going to take it that's kind of that you had enough. You don't really go on a rant.
No, I'm not in a ranty mood this week, actually. There's none of the films, even though most of the films that I'm reviewing this week are terrible, are rant-worthy, to be honest.
Are you on drowsy cough medicine or something?
No, I'm on drowsy everything. I'm on anything that can actually get rid of this cold, but nothing's working, which is annoying.
Right. The Town That Dreaded Sundown, which is... Now, I'm going to reference another film franchise that... you'll probably get what it is already, what one I'm referencing, but to kind of set up and explain how this works, because it is a kind of, it's not a sequel, but it is a sequel. It's not a reboot. It's kind of a weird thing where, if you think back to Scream, you have the Scream films, and you have the first one, then you have the second one, in which they then had a spoof film with it. They had Stab, which was a film in the second film, which referenced the events of the first one, and it was a whole thing, and everyone watched it because it's
very meta, in other words.
Yeah. Here you have the Town That Dreaded Sundown and it's a weird way to explain it, but it is a drama that's done like it's a documentary drama that's based on real things, but it's a sort of story. It's not a documentary. It's done as a proper kind of slasher thriller. But it's done because of the fact of in it starts out with the town of Texarkana, which watches on the anniversary of some murders that happened 65 years earlier. There is sort of a drive-through screening of the original Town That Dreaded Sundown film. In this sort of world, you have the whole thing of that is a film which was based on true events, true murders that happened, which the original was based on some true events of the, linking to murders that really did happen. Here you have, though, the whole thing is centering around these sort of teens there, and in particular the teen of Jamie, played by Addison Timlin. She's there with her boyfriend at the start of the film, who they're not sort of really interested in. They drive off somewhere, park, and are making out, when they are then attacked by a man who is just wearing a sort of a disguise which references the whole thing of the original killings. He kills her boyfriend and lets her live to basically pass on a message saying, tell them about, make sure they know this is about Mary, a mysterious character. So all the way through this, meanwhile, there are people freaking out about this because it's the whole thing of the killer is back from 65 years ago. You have the whole thing going on. The town is freaking out because this all happening. There are murders going on, and there are further murders. And all the while, Jamie decides then, as much as she's shook up and really disturbed by the events that she transpired and experienced, is sort of looking into this and investigating this in the kind of the strong feminine kind of similar thing to Scream with the one who is the victim but is trying to figure out what happened and solve it out, so the fact that she can figure out what's going on. It's a film that is, I'm going to say, it's a very cleverly atmospheric film in the way it's shot, the way it's done. I think the pacing is a little bit off in some cases. I think it could have been a little bit faster. I did like it, though. It's not a long film. It's less than an hour and a half, so it doesn't drag around. But it does have... There's some magic here to the filming. There's the opening scene where she witnesses her boyfriend being stabbed and then she runs. It's a really tense, well edited sequence there, and then there's moments where the tension is built because it doesn't edit too quick. It knows when to edit quickly and it knows when to edit slowly. When you have long holds and pans and the camera moves very slowly, it's really good at building tension, really good at building atmosphere. I really liked it for that respect. I didn't think the performances were great in it for a lot of people. I thought that there were some twists in it and turns, some of which are predictable, a couple of which I didn't predict, I didn't see coming. As much as I don't like horror films, I don't mind slasher films, and there are the tropes that you have, the conventional tropes of the slasher flick, which this does have them. It does make obvious references to some of them. It's not as in your face and poking fun of it like Scream did, but it definitely has. They know that there are these references to it that they're intentionally put in there. You have things like the appearance of Veronica Cartwright plays a role in there, who anyone who's sort of seen any kind of the horror and the genre, the horror and slasher genre, will know her from numerous appearances in this kind of thing. And it knows what it's doing, and it knows well enough to reference it without being too obvious, but it's not trying to be Joss Whedon and turn everything on its head kind of thing. So it's not trying to be clever, because I think, to be honest, I think that pulling that off is very difficult, and if they tried to do that, they would completely fail and it would completely flop. I thought it was well handled, I thought it was well done. I didn't think it was absolutely amazing, but at the same time I didn't get bored, I didn't think it was terrible. I enjoyed it and I was thoroughly engaged in it.
Well, the person who directed it, it's his big screen directorial debut, Alfonso Gomez-Rejon. Previously, he's worked on American Horror Story and Glee. So
yeah, that's different.
That's the kind of stuff that he's worked on, and he was given the chance to do this because the other guy, the guy who created Glee, who's done American Horror Story, he's a producer on this. Ryan Murphy. He's a producer on this, and so he was the one who sort of like brought this ahead. He was interested in directing it himself, but then he thought he'd go off and do American Horror Story and give this to Gomez-Rejon. And so I think he handled it pretty decently for his first big film to direct, considering that he had worked on Glee and the Carrie Diaries, which is a spin-off from Sex and the City. So
I'm just looking at his list of things. He's actually got a film coming out in a few weeks, 4th September.
Me, Earl and the Dying Girl, isn't it? Or something like that.
So, I mean, and that's a comedy drama. So it'd be interesting to see someone who's done if he can pull that off, then he'd definitely be someone to watch out for.
Yeah, because this got a very small cinema release, and I think it handles much better on the smaller screen than the bigger screen, because I found it...
I enjoyed it, but I'm kind of curious. I wish I'd seen it on the big screen. I felt that it might have been worthy of a big screen.
No, it wasn't, trust me, no. It didn't work as well on the big screen because the scope isn't as big as the movie makes out to be. It's sort of a lot more like a I Know What You Did Last Summer 2 Scream kind of movie, rather than just being like...
I thought the way that it referenced that, I thought it was quite inventive and a little bit new, different thing, you know?
It's very metatextual.
Yeah.
It knows the kind of genre that it's inside, and it knows how to handle some of those kind of tropes well. I think that's probably down to Rejon working on American Horror Story, because I think that's helped. He was brought on board with Asylum, so I think that helped him with it because it has got that kind of feel to it. So it's very well done. It works better on the smaller screen, I felt. Final film of the week, and what do we end things off? Bargain basement galore here with the Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. It's the sequel to Paul Blart Mall Cop, and it starts a week after the stuff that's happened in Paul Blart Mall Cop. He was married, because his marriage only lasted 7 days. His wife realised that the marriage wasn't good enough or good for her, and so she's gone off, and now He's single. He lives with his daughter in a house, and he obviously, as the title suggests, he's a mall cop. He's very well established mall cop, and so much so that he gets invited to a mall cop emporium, a seminar kind of thing in Las Vegas. And so he goes there with his daughter and obviously shows himself up in very hilarious fashion, as this clip proves.
I'll need a valid driver's license if you want to take it for a test drive.
I'm all access if you'll peep the laminate. Okay. Let me just nudge her out of whisper mode. Oh.
Okay, well, I see you know your way around a P-133.
I do. Oh, yeah.
Please be careful, sir.
Oh, I guess you wouldn't want me doing this, huh? Oh, yeah!
Please don't.
Oh! Missed it! Oh!
What? See that? That's not good. Still got the laminate, man.
Yeah, and so it's not enough just to have him there at this convention. You've obviously got to have some kind of enemy involved with everything, and so obviously that's the case with Neil Madonna's character, who plays this art thief, who then ends up kidnapping Paul Blart Mall Cop's daughter, and so he has to try and team up with other mall cops to try and stop them and also rescue his daughter in the front. Now, it shows you how unfunny this is. Remember the Police Academy movie that was centred around them going to a police conference kind of thing?
Was that Miami? No.
Yeah, Mission to Miami or something like that.
That was really the bottom. Well, the first bottom. Well, that was 5 and 6 were awful.
Yeah, that's more funnier than this. And so it shows you how bad Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 is, because this is what is known to me anyway as an anti-comedy. If you've watched a comedy movie where you've laughed yourself silly, if you want an antidote to that to make yourself so bored that looking at a dot would look like just absolute brilliant humour, then you need to watch Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. Because that's what it is. Nothing about this movie is funny at all. It relies heavily on him being, oh look, he's fat. Oh look, he's on a Segway. Oh look, he's fell down. And then that's the kind of humour that this movie just brings across. It's not funny. It's embarrassing for Kevin James to be involved with. He had a funny, fleeting moment in Pixels where he shot a Smurf. I so hoped that Smurfs would show up in this movie so he could shoot them, because then it might have made me giggle just slightly. But nothing about this film is admirable at all. I went to see this in the cinema, and so it shows you how unlucky I am. And not one single person in the screening laughed. Normally, when I go to see a comedy movie, I'm the only person who's not laughing. In this one, there was nobody laughing at all. So it shows you how unfunny this movie is. It's a movie originally that didn't need a sequel, and this proves it, that it didn't need a sequel, because it's just completely devoid of anything.
Given, obviously, he's in both films out this week, given a choice between them, Paul Blart 2 or Pixels?
Pixels, because he's only in it for about 5 minutes. Whereas with this one, he gets a couple of moments in Pixels, whereas this one, he's in the whole entire film, which involves him, like I said, falling down a lot.
Right. Okay, that's it. As much as we only had a few this week's DVD and Blu-ray section, we are done with this week's reviews. Let's go through quickly TV movies of the week.
I've got 3, and I don't think you might have chosen any of them, apart from the third one, I'm guessing.
I've got 3, but I've got references to mentions of a couple others, because they do link with something next week.
Okay, so I'll quickly go through my 3. Film 4 is starting because Fright Fest is at the end of the month, and Film 4 is involved with Fright Fest, so they've got their Fright Fest season at the moment. And instead of me going mad with choosing tons of horror, I chose the 2 standout ones, and that was The Evil Dead, which is on very early Thursday morning or late Wednesday night at 20 to 1 in the morning on Film 4, the original Evil Dead. Even though I like Evil Dead 2 more, it's still, Evil Dead is a brilliant film. It's repeated again, the remake is on the night after, and it's repeated again on Saturday. And also on Thursday night at 9 o'clock, Sinister, because the sequel is out on Friday, Kieran Foy, who directed Citadel, he's directed the sequel. Scott Derrickson directed the original, and it's very creepy. It's got some really well-handled moments in the film. So Sinister is that one. And my third choice, completely different kettle of fish here. It's on Channel 4 on Sunday, the 23rd at 9 o'clock. Les Miserables.
Yeah, that was one of mine I had as well.
I'm surprised that you would have chose that, considering it's a musical and how much you don't like musicals. But
I do
it is,
like that. Yeah,
it is a musical that's handled with such brilliant, and it's a proper musical because there is only one line of dialogue which is spoken through the entirety of the movie. It heavily relies,
unless you count Russell Crowe's scenes.
Yeah, with him singing, but at least he tries. Because the whole entire film is he gets completely outdone by Hugh Jackman, but Hugh Jackman's got a really good voice. But it heavily relies on the songs themselves, and the songs are so iconic that it carries the film brilliantly.
Okay, mine that I've got, because you've already mentioned Les Miserables, which I had there. I haven't seen it, but I am going to mention again Sinister, because I did mention it because of the fact that next week Sinister 2, as you said, is already coming out. It's worth noting as well, it's on, as you said, on Film 4 Thursday the 20th at 9 o'clock. It's also repeated on Sunday the 23rd at 10:55. So if you're not sure and you've got to see it and maybe go and see the other one at some point, then...
I would actually recommend watching it on the Thursday, because then at least you can see it before you see Sinister 2.
Yeah. The other films that I picked out before that on tomorrow night, Tuesday the 18th at 11:25 on Film 4 is Ruby Sparks, which is a small British film which is with Paul Dano. Is it Paul Dano?
I think so.
Who is a writer struggling and then manages to actually create from his imagination, who makes her real, this character that he's writing. And it's a very sort of meta film, very interesting film in the way it's done.
Sort of like opposite of the film Death Note, which involves a book where the right person's name in it and they die. So they kill somebody.
It's kind of, if you can imagine that mixed with weird science but not played for laughs. Well, initially played for laughs, but then goes into the whole thing of the seriousness of it. And the other one is on BBC 3 on Saturday the 22nd at 9 o'clock, Minority Report, which is a great sort of darker Steven Spielberg film, and a good sort of morally questionable film, but I really like it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do actually as well.
Yep. So that's it for this week's show. Thank you for listening and joining us. If you've been live, if you've been listening to us on iTunes or any other of the numerous places that filters down to, you can always find us as usual. I said at the start of the show, I'll say it again. Find us at Monday Movie Show at mondaymovieshow.co.uk.
Don't type the la 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 part in your web browser, because you'll just be mocked.
On facebook.com/Monday Movie Show, and you can find us on Twitter at Monday Movie Show. Stuart is on Twitter at Cryptic Tadpole. I'm on Twitter at AHDVD. There's the followingthenerd.com site, who is on there and has the last couple of their shows, because the show that the radio station they broadcast through on Thursday nights is going to be closing down at the end of this month. So hopefully they'll find an alternative method of doing a show each week, because they do a good show. And also there's FromPageToScreen.com, FromPage2Screen.com, who does several podcasts for different areas, a horror one, a British one, and good shows all round, and you appear on both of those. So,
I'm on the horror one, not the British one.
Yeah.
So quickly, can I mention Cicada the movie? Follow them on Twitter. Their Indiegogo campaign finished a little while ago. They raised some like $25,000, which is more than enough for them to actually make the film that they were wanting to create. They wanted 50,000, but they had an idea of what they could create for 25, and so at least there were a few places set up. But follow them on Twitter, CICADA, the movie, and it's very like, if you love your cheesy, over-the-top horror films, very much like Birdemic or Sharknado, then what they're creating is looking really interesting. And so, yeah, I'm following the guys, and they are fantastic. I've spoken to the directors and the producers involved, and they know their horror. They know their very B-movies horror, and so they're creating something really fun.
So, as I said, thank you for listening to us. The show we mentioned as well in the TV movies there, we'll get to in a second, the clip we're going to be ending the show with. Before that though, movie of the week.
I can't believe I'm actually seeing this. but it's a Judd Apatow film with Trainwreck.
And for me, it's Precinct 75, closely followed up by the Town That Dreaded Sundown. But Precinct 75 is a great documentary. I would suggest to check it out and see what you think. So until next week, when this movie has been released, Stuart will be reviewing it.
Yes.
We'll leave you with this clip for the new horror film Sinister 2. Until next week, bye-bye.
Bye.
There are fragments, references to Bagul, the boogeyman, across all cultures over the centuries. That some cultures believed that it lived in another realm, reachable only by ritual or sacrifice. And others believed that it fed off of the corruption of innocence. But no matter what, there are always three things in common. There's a murdered family, missing children, and some form of iconological totem, or a thematic offering. There's image, literature, music.
Okay, so the murders are captured through art?
It's aesthetic observance of violence.
That little girl, the piano, what exactly is she saying?
It's Norwegian. She says, "Quiet. Bagul can't hear me over your yelling, Mom."
It's the kids.
He gets the kids.
It's the kids. He gets the kids. It's the kids.
Okay, you should probably destroy that thing.